So, welcome back to the second part of the Type 3 build. As you can see, it's already primed. I used Mr. Surfacer 1200. I found some dust and blemishes, so I sand them off. For the base coat, I am going to use hay color. From the Mr. Color Japanese late war AFV paint set for spot on accuracy.
There's that word again.
These lacquers apply very nicely and have enough teeth to apply on the bare plastic, but I still recommend applying primer to check for potential defects. This color set, Mr. Color CS663, seems hard to find outside of Asia. If you can get it easily, I recommend it. If not, there's alternatives from other paint companies or mixing available. Now we do the tracks. I did not use primer in this case and used straight up lacquer on them. I used a dark brown from Gaia Notes, which is exceptionally durable and gives a nice base to work on. Now we apply the ground camouflage color from the set. For doing freehanded soft edge camouflage, I use a 0.2 tip and around 12 to 10 psi. I come as close as I can and make sure the soft edge is scale appropriate. When I do this kind of camouflage, I apply it irregularly and doing squiggles to fill in the color, trying to imitate the crew painting it with a spray gun, and the fading and weathering of the paint subtly. Up next, a layer of chipping fluid before the grass color. You can use chipping fluid or hairspray for this. This will help us to apply chipping in a randomly controlled way. Apply a misty layer and when dry to touch, you can continue painting. Now I apply the grass color. Same techniques as before. In my opinion, it gives a rich, realistic appearance more than a solid color or modulations in a very subtle way. Next, we do the chipping. We wet the surface with water, and then with a sharp object, we gently scratch the surface. This method gives you control in this chipping technique. Also, to complement it, we use a stiff brush for more random results. Now, decals. We apply a decal softening solution. I had this one around, but I really like Microsoft set, but any will do to be honest. We apply it carefully into position. Apply decal softener. And once the decal is set, we dry the excess liquid with a paper towel. Try not to touch the decal as softening solutions make them very brittle, especially while drying. For the tracks, in this case I'm going to dry brush chrome silver lacquer. You could use also metallic acrylics or pigments. I really like metallic pigments, but in this case I want a shiny polished contrast with the dust and sand weathering. When dry brushing lacquers, do not apply them perpendicularly as they tend to clump. Do a more angled motion and also it will catch on the surfaces that get more exposed easily. proceed to hand paint the tires on the road wheels carefully, with a tire grey acrylic paint painted until the rim. And don't forget the back and inside. Now the mufflers. We give it a dark rust base color. This paint has excellent coverage and only one layer is needed. No need for varnish later either. With the base colors we hand paint the less rusted paints. I used an enamel wash for the next step. I highly recommend using a dark brown thin enamel paint or weathering effect, rather than a pre-made wash, but as you can see, it still works. I'm applying a light and dark rust tone pigments, dab it over in a random way. And if you have more rust tones, feel free to apply them, it gives a richer end result. I've been using this method since I came back to the hobby, and I think it's the best method for mufflers and most rusty surfaces, as you can see here. Nothing beats this method, as acrylic paint applications looks pretty terrible in my opinion. Anyway, I digress. Once dry, we can apply more enamel and pigments, either wet or dry, if we want to refine or get more variety. Another very interesting thing of this is that we don't disturb the pigments, we can do a lot of textures, but be careful of scale if you want to try that. Now we add some black pigment to the exhaust and dry blend it. Up next, we are going to add some oil effect in the exhaust and in some of the unions too. Let's start the main chipping. I'm going to start by following some of the chips from the chipping fluid. With a sharp tip brush, I do deeper chipping or create new ones. It's nice to show different layers and types of wear and tear. Also, have in mind the kind of use and maintenance your subject has or had, what kind of situation you want to reproduce, and then adjust the weathering levels accordingly. There's no over weathering as long as that's what you wanted to display. Another method for chipping to complement it is the sponge technique. Simply grab a little piece of sponge, dab it in paint, dry the excess off, and dab the parts you want to chip with it. Super simple, lazy, and foolproof, and I love it, it's a genius technique. The problem is that it's very intense looking, you can play with pressure, so I keep it to the areas with a lot of movement or with base colors representing shallower chipping. Also, remember to apply the same level of chipping to decals so they look painted in and all blend into one. To paint the inside of the lights, I like to use a Molotov chrome pen. Got it 4 years ago and never looked back. Simple, easy and excellent results. Just dab it or decant it, whatever you prefer. I'm lazy, so I'm just gonna use it straight from the pen. See you on part 3 for some more weathering and finally making a dusty tank clanking in Pacific Island. Thanks for watching, hope you learned something and subscribe for more.